Meteorologist Matthew East here with you. This is the December 30th edition of the Carolina Weather Video, and we have some mild New Year's weekend weather to unfold for us, but then it's going to get much, much colder. What will easily be the coldest air we've seen thus far this cold weather season. The coldest day probably being Tuesday, the coldest night likely Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Let's start off with a look at the radar imagery. Before we get to that, we have a pretty strong upper level disturbance that'll pivot through tonight. And at the moment, there's a pretty decent amount of precip with this. Most of it's some light rain in the Ohio Valley. Then you get to a little bit of snow in northern Iowa, parts of Minnesota, and southern Wisconsin. That's a pretty well-defined upper level disturbance. And here's the water vapor shot this morning, and it's centered right there, and that'll dive off to the east-southeast, and it's tracking rather a little further south than some of the other modeling had that. So because of that, I've gone ahead and thrown in the chance of a very brief shower, mainly tonight across the region. If you see a shower, it will not amount to much. I doubt anybody really gets over 500 of an inch of rain, but a brief shower can't be ruled out tonight. Now here's the temperature map, still fairly mild over a lot of the central and eastern part of the country, considering it is the next to last day of December, but that is all about to change. There's some really pretty brutally cold air just above the top of this temperature map that'll plunge all the way down into the eastern part of the country, and there'll probably wind up being some freezes down into the citrus growing regions of Florida as we get into next week too. So it's going to be a big blast of cold air. Here's what's happening in the upper levels. There's that upper level disturbance moving in today. This is off the European model, valid this afternoon. Let's go out to tomorrow morning. That Clipper swings through. And again, it's tracking far enough south that there might be a couple showers around our region tonight. But here's the big deal beginning to set up this weekend back in the middle part of the continent. Let's go a little bit further out in time. Here we are Sunday, early in the afternoon. And that's a pretty good trough beginning to carve itself out. That'll drive an Arctic cold front through here Sunday night, and then the trough, with a lot of energy on the backside here, really digs itself out as we get into the first part of next work week. There's Tuesday morning when the trough is at its sharpest, and then notice there's another little piece of energy on the European right here that just reinforces the trough a little bit later on next week. Now, in terms of temperatures, this is the 850 millibar temperatures, valid Tuesday early evening. Now, these are the temperatures up at about 5,000 feet. And again, this is a very significant blast of cold air. That is a minus 12 degree temperature up at 5,000 feet. That's minus 16. These are Celsius temperatures. So very, very cold air into the eastern part of the country. Now, today we'll see highs well into the 50s, maybe some folks clipping 60. And then with that little system diving in tonight, again, maybe a brief shower or two with lows in the 40s. Now, just some great weekend weather coming up for New Year's Eve. Tomorrow looks fantastic. Highs at a lot of spots in the low 60s. Low 60s again on Sunday in most spots. But again, the Arctic front knocking on our door by Sunday evening. It plunges through Sunday night, and then Monday is a cold air advection day, meaning there'll be some stiff northwest winds. And temperatures Monday probably in the 40s. It'll be one of those days, Monday, where the cold air advection is balancing out against some downsloping winds. And either way you look at it, it's going to be very blustery and chilly. And we probably are down into the low 20s in a lot of spots for lows by Tuesday morning. Now again, Tuesday probably the coldest day with this blast of Arctic air. And it could be a day on Tuesday where a lot of Piedmont spots really struggle to even make it above freezing for any extended period of time. And the coldest morning probably winds up being Wednesday morning, when a lot of us will probably see some teens for lows. Now later on next week, the models disagree on how quickly we warm up. This is the GFS for Thursday, and we really see those temperatures rebounding on the GFS much more quickly than on the European. Notice it's much a chillier look at the same time on the European model Thursday. And again, like I mentioned earlier, that little piece of energy on the backside of the trough helps keep the trough around longer on the European model. Now let's look out to the longer range. There is the NAO ensembles, and actually it's pretty good agreement that this is going to head to at least neutral later in January and maybe at least somewhat negative. Pretty decent agreement on that. Now there is not good agreement as to where the AO heads. Some modeling takes the AO down to neutral at least. Some keep it positive. That could go either way. If we could get the Arctic Oscillation to go to negative as well, That would mean probably some blocking setting itself up, and it could be more sustained cold. But as it stands now, with the NAO heading toward negative, at least that's going to mean some pretty good cold shots at times, most likely, in the eastern U.S. as January unfolds. Okay, that is it for today's edition of the Carolina Weather Video. Have a great New Year's weekend. Stay safe. Happy New Year, and God bless.